Welcome everyone to our October meeting. Great to see so many new people joining each session, and we do hope you find it of benefit in the management and living well. We have those here who have been diagnosed with heart failure or another heart condition. We have healthcare professionals on here to support you in answering any questions which you might have this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lucinda and I work with Katie, who you'll see on here. We both work in the Patient Services Department of the Irish Heart Foundation. You'll see Katie often in the Heart Support Network and sending the emails that you receive. So our job is to support you in whatever way we can, whether by phone on the Heart Support Network Facebook page or here in the Zoom meetings. But we can also help, to signpost to other supports, such as patient-to-patient support, our counselling, or on to HSE programs like the Living Well. So whatever it is you need there. And also, I suppose, just because of our sharing there beforehand, I'm also a heart patient. I had a cardiac arrest at the age of 18, which wasn't today nor yesterday. So I'm 30 years living with my condition, non-QT syndrome, and I've had 4 pacemakers and I'm on beta blockers, and living well on the journey. But just to share that with you guys as well, as part of my motivation for being here is that I'm on that road. So again, to let you know that we're recording the presentations to share on the Heart Support Network for those who could not make the meeting, but we will stop recording once we come back to the main group for the Q&A section and for our open discussion on topics relevant to you. As I say, for now, everyone will be on mute, but we look forward to lots of chat once the presentation is finished. And before we welcome Norma, I'd just like to talk to you about a programme that we're rolling out for heart patients and your families. You may have heard of it. It's a Healthy Food Made Easy programme devised by the HSE. It's going to be interesting as it will be online, but you don't get away with not cooking. It's a 6-week course which is hands-on, learning about nutrition, but also coming away knowing, or maybe relearning, which I was trying to do on our last, when we used to make face-to-face program out in Waterford, and maybe making the brown bread or going back to the basics and making soup and all of that. Tips on cutting out salt, which is very important for us. And there's a dietitian that comes in as part of that 6-week program to answer all your questions that we've gathered over the few weeks together. We're hoping to begin this on the 8th of November, but to tell you more about it, I want to introduce Martin Tracy, who is part of our patient panel here and chef extraordinaire. Are you there, Martin? Just maybe to chat a little bit.
Yeah, basically, good evening. Yeah, we're launching the Healthy Food Made Easy with the Irish Heart Foundation in mind. It's going to be run over a 6-week course, and it's 2.5 hours, 1 day a week. There is participant cooking in it, so I will be cooking live online, no extra charge there. And what we would do is we would then encourage you to cook along with us and try the recipes. All the recipes that you'll be given all the ingredients that you need, and anything you need or any help we can give you along the way. Now, the program is, I say, 6 weeks, and it's very much participant involvement. It's very important in the course. So again, if you sign up for 6 weeks, we're expecting quite a few people. So we ask you to make sure that you can commit yourself for that 6 weeks. And again, we're talking about healthy living, and we're actually talking about how to eat healthy and how to cook from scratch. So we're not going to be buying any processed sauces or anything like that. And very much like people with heart failure or heart problems, salt is the enemy. So we look upon that in that way. So like I say, we teach you about how to eat off the food pyramid, which a lot of people would have heard, especially a lot of people with heart issues would have heard about the food pyramid, where all the good foods are at the bottom and all the bad foods are at the top. And you can eat as many as you like of the bottom tier, but less and less as you go up to the top tier. And again, we're not looking to tell you, no, you can't eat this or you can't eat that. We encourage you to eat in moderation and just eat that little bit more healthy, and hopefully give you the tips along the way on how to actually do that, how to make a spaghetti bolognese without using a tin of Dolmio, or how to make a curry without using the curry, making curry powder, using the spices. So that's our aim. And then, like I say, it's the 6 weeks which going to teach you how to understand what is on a food label, how much fiber, how much cholesterol is the recommended amount you should be having. Again, with the salt, the reduction of salt and the re-education of your palates. And again, if you learn to cook, you will have a life skill. So again, that's very important. So like I say, as Lucinda said, we're going to be running the course from the second week in November, and we'll be finished by second week of December. So you'll be finished in time to produce yourself some lovely food over the Christmas period. And again, as with our newsletter, I actually write the recipes for that. And over the next 2 newsletters, I'm going to start putting in a few Christmas ideas, Christmas cakes, and that sort of thing. Healthy, full of alcohol, but healthy.
No, Martin.
No,
Stop that.
It's full of fruit, and again, it's just the less sugar that we'll be putting in, and actually all the recipes there has no salt. So again, we hope to have you participating in it. Lucinda will give you more information as we go along, and I know they're going to launch it on Monday on the Facebook page. So we look forward to seeing you all then.
Thanks, Martin. Martin, you didn't let them know that you are a chef. You're a chef, but how long have you been off salt?
Been off salt now for 5 years.
Yeah.
So again,
it's gone through the journey.
Yeah, salt is a mortal enemy. So, it's a re-education of my palate, because being a chef, we just throw handfuls of salt in everything, and we preserve food with salt. So again, it's just all things that we shouldn't do. We know we don't do. And again, it's people say they can't eat without salt, but you can. You just have to re-educate your palate to not have the salt, because it's the tongue, the part of the tongue, that the sweetness, the sour, there's all different parts of the tongue where the tongue actually craves salt. And the more you give it, the more it wants. So you have to wean it off slowly.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you very much. So to sign up, it's just our usual email. So it's heartservices@irishheart.ie. As I said, it will go on the Heart Support Network on Monday. It is first come, first served, pardon the pun, but we've very limited places because it is online. And even tonight, if you want to put your name into the chat bar that you are interested, and just send it on to me and Katie, we can check in with you tomorrow and send on details to you. So now on to the main event and the importance of self-management of our heart condition, which I suppose doing something like the Healthy Food Made Easy program is all about. Us as patients getting the information and making it work in our lives to keep our hearts as healthy as possible. So I'd like to welcome Norma Caples, heart failure nurse from University Hospital Waterford and lead nurse for the National Heart Programme, who will speak with us on self-management. So welcome, Norma.
Thanks, Lucinda. Thanks a million for having me. And I'm actually going to try a little something different tonight. I'm going to try a blend of a short video to show you, and then I'm going to have some PowerPoint presentation. I just wanted to mix up the way I was kind of doing it. As Lucinda said, I'm a heart failure nurse in Waterford. So afterwards, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And if we do run out of time, you can always ask Lucinda afterwards if you think of them. And Lucinda will ask me, then I'll be in touch with what we recommend to do. So I'm going to share my screen.
What is heart failure? Your heart is a muscle that pumps blood to every part of your body. Heart failure is a condition where your heart muscle doesn't pump blood around the body properly. It happens when your heart becomes enlarged, weak, or stiff. Heart attack and high blood pressure are common causes of heart failure, but there are many others. Ask your healthcare team about the cause of yours. When your heart is not pumping properly, less blood is going to your body's important organs. This can make you feel tired and dizzy. People with heart failure may experience shortness of breath or feeling puffed after a small amount of effort. Fluid buildup around the body also happens often. When the heart pumping function is abnormal, the body tries to cope by increasing the amount of fluid in the bloodstream. This fluid can then leak from the bloodstream into the lungs, ankles, legs or stomach, where you may notice swelling. Heart failure is a serious problem, but with support from family, loved ones, and your healthcare team, you can manage your condition, improve your health, and make it easier to do the things that are important to you. Talk to your doctor about what has led to your heart failure. And to learn more about managing heart failure, watch the other videos in this series.
Now, I'm just going to share now my PowerPoint. So heart failure, I think that the words heart failure is actually can be very frightening. And when people see on the letter for coming to clinics that you're coming to a heart failure clinic, that you might think that your whole heart is failing. But hopefully what that video showed is that it's the heart pump is not working efficiently at times. And that's what heart failure is. It was an old term that was back years ago. There wasn't an awful lot of medication for it back then, but thankfully now there's great medication and devices that can actually help people to live a good quality of life and to feel much better in themselves. I think first and foremost, the most important thing is to know what are the symptoms of heart failure, be it for yourself if you have heart failure, or you might actually recognize it for somebody else. So one is shortness of breath. And you might notice that you're getting more breathless trying to do things. You might notice a member of the family or a friend when you're out for a walk is not actually going the same distance, but now they're getting breathless and having to stop. Swelling in the ankles or around the stomach. And you might find that maybe your skirt or your trousers is actually getting tight, or your shoes are getting tighter than what they normally were. And activity intolerance is that the things that you usually do, be it household chores, out gardening, things that you normally did, you're now finding them harder to do. You're becoming more tired, trying to do it, more breathless. Loss of appetite is quite common, and that's because fluid can also congest around our gut, and that makes a feeling of fullness, so that when you see a large meal, you actually be turned off by it. So it's, you have to eat little and often. It's the extreme tiredness. I think that's the biggest thing people feel, is that fatigue that goes with it. So you have to realize you're carrying around an extra weight if you're carrying fluid, and that's actually very tiring. Our bodies are actually very clever, and our bodies makes us slow down if our heart isn't able to keep up the pumping to our vital organs. So in order to slow that process down, our bodies make us feel tired. But sometimes when you just sit in a chair, you might only sit down for a short while, and people find they're actually not off to sleep quite easily. So that's actually very common. The other is difficulty in sleeping, and this is something that I'd like you to be quite aware of. If you go to sleep and you wake up from your sleep feeling you can't breathe properly, that's actually a very strong sign that you might be accumulating fluid in your body, and that's when you'd really have to tell your doctor or your nurse about that. And sudden weight gain, for those who are weighing themselves every day and as a part of their heart failure care, they will notice that their weight is going up suddenly, and that's despite your diet. So if you're eating normally, there's been no change to your diet, and suddenly your weight is going up, well, then you wonder, is it fluid that's beginning to gather in the body? So if I don't have heart failure and I have these symptoms, how do I get diagnosed? So you go to the GP and you discuss the symptoms with the GP, or you advise your friends to go to the GP and discuss the symptoms. It is so vital. The faster you get diagnosed, the faster then that you can go on medication if needed. And then obviously then that improvement will start to happen. The GP then orders a simple blood test. And before that, the GPs didn't have an awful lot of access to this blood test. It's called a BNP, or an NT-proBNP is the medical term for it. But now, thankfully, the majority of GPs have access to this test. Basically, if this blood test is abnormally high, that shows then you need more tests done. And the GP will also do an ECG, and a lot of the time the ECG is abnormal. So the test that they will then refer you on for is called an echo, or an ultrasound of your heart. And that will look at the pumping function of your heart, and will also look at the valves that can also be causes for heart failure. So the team that's looking after you is you yourself, and you are a very important part of this team. Also, your family is important, your GP, the pharmacist or chemist, your heart failure nurse, your cardiologist, the palliative care team. And some people mightn't be familiar that the palliative care team is on the team that's looking after you. They're actually a very important part that looks after symptoms. They mightn't always see you, but they're our team that we would refer to if we're having problems with symptoms. And somebody said earlier there at the start that it's important to tell what your symptoms are. And because if you don't tell us what the symptoms are, we're not going to be able to try and sort out what's causing the problem. Cardiac rehab is very important. The importance of exercise is absolutely huge. If you haven't been to cardiac rehab, I'd advise that you'd ask to know, could you get referred to it? It's a program of exercise that's over a couple of weeks, usually 8 weeks, where you're monitored. And this kind of shows how much you can actually push yourself as well, because when you've got heart failure, you begin to wonder, what can I do and what can't I do? And I find that this is a great source of where you can see what exercise I need to do and how much I need to push myself. At the moment, because of COVID, there's been a long waiting list for cardiac rehab with the Irish Heart Foundation, and they have resources online that will help you with exercise classes on the Facebook page as well. And I'd really strongly advise everybody to get aware about the exercise. Keeping your muscles and bones strength up is just something else that's going to help you to keep well, and if you have periods being ill, you'll actually endure it much better when you've got good strength in your muscles. And being seen by a dietitian, not all places have the luxury of having a dietitian, but if there is a dietitian available, this is just great to go through your diet, and I'll go through a little bit of that later too. Some teams also have a psychologist on board, and with the Irish Heart Foundation, they also have access to counselling that I think is absolutely of huge benefit. Our mind is another part of us that we really need to mind well. I consider the whole care of heart failure to be like that of a jigsaw. We can't look after just one piece. We have to put all the pieces together in order to be as well as possible. And that's also the wellness of our mind. If our mind is too active, and then the rest inside our organs are overactive, and then the medication can't work as well. So there is a difference between good stress and bad stress. It's being able to recognize the bad stress. So this resource that the Irish Heart Foundation have with the counselling is all free, and a member of the family can also have it for free. So my strongest advice is to engage in everything that's being offered to you, and you'll always pick up something and learn something to keep as well as possible. So organisations as like here with the Irish Heart Foundation, and the support with groups is just fantastic, learning from each other, and the Living Well programme that Martin is involved in as well is excellent. It teaches us ways of learning how to deal and manage with chronic conditions. So what should I do if I have been diagnosed with heart failure? Well, this requires daily action. So daily weight is of huge importance. So in the morning, you get up. So after you've gone to the toilet and before you dress, you weigh yourself, write your weight down, and you're watching out for an increase in weight. You're watching out for 2 kgs or 4 pounds over a 3 to 7 day period. And especially, as I said, if that weight has gone up and you haven't changed your diet, everything is the same, and for no reason this weight seems to be going up, that's an early indication that you need to contact somebody. On the Irish Heart Foundation as well, they've also got an app. It's called the Fluid Heart Tracker app. I think sometimes that you know yourself, if you're weighing yourself every day, your weight goes up and down every day, and that's normal. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish, when am I actually meant to ring? So this will actually take the worry of that away. So instead of your logbook, you can log your weight into this Fluid Heart Tracker app. It's all free to download. So you can either do it in kgs or in stones and pounds. And if your weight goes up to a level that you need to contact your doctor or your nurse, this alert screen, which is up there for to see, that just pops up on your screen, and then you know I have to contact somebody. The next is for medications, and to take your medications every day. It's also really important to know the times of when you're meant to take your medications. When you come out of hospital, it's written down once a day, twice a day, and then the chemist will give you your tablets. But sometimes we might want you to take your tablets at a certain time. So if you do have a diagnosis of heart failure and you haven't been through a heart failure service, please ask to know, can you go through a heart failure service? It's just another valuable resource that you can ring and find out, but also that we take the time to go through when your medication, when they're to be taken. Some medications can't be taken together. And if you find that you're finding it hard to remember, did I take the tablets or not? Consider a blister pack for your medication. Some chemists, that if they just want it actually put on the prescription if a blister pack is needed, and then they'll provide it for free. Some others charge. So ask if you can get it for free, and if it needs to be on the prescription. If so, nobody will mind at all putting it on the prescription. Some foods interact with your medication, and just to be aware of, when you go to your clinics, find out, is there anything I need to be aware about my medication? Is there foods? If you're feeling anyway nauseated or sick after taking your medication, tell us, tell your doctor or your nurse, because there might be other medication that we can give instead of that. And if it's causing you being nauseated or not feeling right, well, then that's a sign that it actually mightn't suit you and that we need to change it. Also, at times when you're feeling unwell, when you have diarrhea or vomiting, you need to know which tablet you're not to take. And also in the health shops, there'll be these health supplements, and a lot of people think that because they're healthy and they're from herbs, that they should be nice and safe, but there's actually an awful lot of interaction with these health supplements and your medication. So if you are on some, and people take tonics over the winter, some of these tonics actually put up your heart rate. And for people who've got heart failure, we don't want their heart rate to go up too high, because the heart won't have the time to fill properly, so it'll work less well as a pump. So if you are going taking a tonic over the winter, just bring this in with you and just ask in the clinic, can I take this? But also the local pharmacy or the local chemist, they're actually an excellent resource as well. And you could ask them, is this safe to take with my tablets? I'd highly recommend that you use the same chemist all the time when getting your tablets, and not to be switching between chemists, because then that chemist where you get your tablets from all the time will know exactly what you're on and will know what the interactions are with those medications and be able to guide you also. The next important thing is to know your limitations. Sometimes I think our mind and our body don't match, and that we think that we're able to do something, and when we go to do it, we become quite tired at it. So if you become tired at doing something and continue to do it, again, your heart rate will start to increase, your blood pressure will start to increase, and this will lead to your heart not working efficiently as a pump. and then you'll be at risk of holding on to fluid. So know when you're reaching that time when you're beginning to feel tired, and that it's so important that you stop and you take a rest for a few minutes and then go back at it. Having a rest during the day is very important. Like I was saying earlier about resting your mind, that helps rest your organs. When you have a rest during the day, now you needn't go to bed, but even if you just rested on the chair for 15 minutes, it actually helps all our organs to rest. And actually our medications work much better. And rest when you're tired. There'll be days when you're tired more than other days, and that's normal. It's when those days of tiredness gets more common, that you're beginning to get more tired than usual. That's when you need to let your doctor or your nurse know. And as I said, if you haven't been to the cardiac rehab program, ask to know, can you get referred to it? I was saying earlier about how much exercise helps maintain the strength and condition of your bones and muscles. And that's so important in order to keep well, especially through times of being unwell and through doing activity. And Martin mentioned salt, and yes, he's dead right. Salt is definitely the enemy when it comes to fluid. And a lot of you will be on water tablets. The water tablet actually works by reducing the salt in our blood, and that's how we get rid of fluid. So if you put salt back into you, you'll undo the job of the water tablet. So we then have to give you more water tablets. And as you know, if any of you have to take them, they're not an easy medication to take at all. So if, for one, you don't add salt to your food, that's the most important thing. We have low salt, sea salt, pink salt, it's all salt. So do not use any replacements for it, and definitely don't use the low salt. Low salt has actually something called potassium in it. And some of the tablets that we use can actually raise potassium. So the low salt isn't recommended at all. Martin mentioned about processed food, and we'd strongly recommend to avoid that. Anything in the powder that you have to add water to has got an awful lot of salt in it. So like gravies, cup of soups. Read the food labels, and I've an example of them down there at the bottom. And you'd see a lot of them where they have the fat and the calories in the food packets. So green would be good to have, orange would be careful, and red would be avoid. So if salt, which is also called sodium, is in red, avoid that. And fresh or frozen vegetables, they're good to have, and fruit and fresh meat. So the obvious salty meats, then like we'll say bacon, and then the processed rashers and sausages, avoid them. We've got an awful lot of hidden salt in our food already, so that not adding to it would be a great start. And fluid volume. Sometimes when you go into hospital, you might have too much fluid in your system, so that the doctor in the hospital might say to you, you're put on a fluid restriction. And that's only usually until the fluid actually comes off, and you mightn't be told after your discharge from hospital that you're allowed to drink any more or any less. So what's kind of recommended as a general rule of thumb is that you'd want to drink at least a litre of fluid every day, because your tablets need fluid volume to work too, but not to go over 2 litres. And just to be aware of what actually fluid volume is. So that's tea, coffee, water, the alcohol, minerals, it's all fluid. And the alcohol, just be very careful with alcohol. One, with the volume, but also with alcohol can actually put up your heart rate, and actually again prevent your heart from working as well as a pump. And I'd advise that while you're on medication, to try and get your heart as strong as possible. If possible, avoid alcohol to give your heart the best chance. Also weight, just to be, if you're not sure what your body weight for healthy should be, just ask your doctor or your nurse. Some of the treatments that we use for heart failure, some of them, we're not able to use them if your body weight is too high. So you just ask your doctor or your nurse, what weight should I be? And then you just work a little bit towards getting into a normal body weight. I wouldn't recommend any great diets as such, except maybe cutting down on portion sizes is actually a good way to actually start. It's now coming on for the flu season, and I hope an awful lot of you are after getting your flu vaccine. The COVID booster is out as well for those who are over 80 and high risk, but the flu vaccine is being given out at the moment. The flu vaccine is also being given out in the chemists, and I recommend that not alone that yourselves and everybody gets it, but that also your family. The flu was actually very little last year, and usually winter's very low one season. The flu rates are very high for the next season, and people can actually die from the flu. I'd recommend everybody, I've got all my family to have got the flu vaccine. And when you get the flu vaccine, we protect each other from the flu as well. So if your family, if you can encourage them to get the flu vaccine, that will help further protect you from avoiding the flu. It doesn't eliminate you getting the flu, but if you do get it, hopefully then you will not be as sick as what you could be if you didn't get the flu vaccine. The sexual activity, that is a really important, healthy part of any relationship. And I think in Ireland, we're very poor at bringing it up when we go into our doctor or nurse. It's something we don't really talk about. But as I said, it's a very normal, healthy part of any relationship. And unfortunately, an awful lot of people report sexual problems. So when you're given a diagnosis and you're, especially to do with your heart, you're kind of wondering, is it safe to engage back into sexual activity? So the physical effort for normal sexual activity is basically, as a rule of thumb, compared to going up 3 flights of stairs, doing general housework or gardening. And if you find that you've marked limitation in doing any normal activity, or you're becoming breathless or tired easily, talk to your doctor or your nurse before engaging back into sexual activity. It's just to make sure that it's something safe for you to do. And sometimes that men might suffer from impotence, and it actually might be just due to a medication that you're taking, and it's so easy to change that medication for an alternative medication. So if there's any problems, don't keep it to yourselves. Tell us. That's what we're here for, and that we'll then see what medications you're on, what the problem is, and see then if we can actually change that medication for you. So traveling with heart failure, of course you can travel. So people are beginning to head back out into the Spain and foreign countries again. Just be aware in the airplanes that the cabin, that the oxygen is actually reduced, and that's down to really more of a financial thing. It goes from 95 down to 92%, and usually we never really notice it. And flying for up to 7 hours is actually quite safe for people with heart failure. But that if you're getting breathlessness, that you have to stop to catch your breath, I'd recommend you order oxygen before flying, and it's very easy to get, it's free. So when you go about booking your flight, you just ask the airline, could you have the form to order the oxygen? They need at least 1 week's notice. So as I said, it's no problem. You bring your form into the clinic, we sign it and stamp it, and then the oxygen is there for you if you need it. I've done it for loads of people. I don't think anybody actually ever required it, but if you do require it and you haven't got the form filled out, well, then it actually makes it a little bit more difficult to get the oxygen. So just have that done, and something free and easy to do. If you do have an episode where you're retaining fluid, or you've got an episode of heart failure, or if you've had to have an increase in water tablets, you shouldn't fly for 6 weeks after this episode. If you're on the flight, don't be sitting for too long, just to prevent clots. Just get up, walk around. Bring a letter about your medications, about your history, and who the name of your cardiologist or your heart failure nurse is with you. Know where the hospital or where the doctor is, where you're going to stay. And as I said, when you plan well and plan ahead, this may never happen, but it reduces down an awful lot of the stress if you do need to contact somebody. So dress for the weather, be it too hot or too cold. make sure you have the appropriate clothing and watch your diet. As Martin said, as I quoted Martin an awful lot tonight, but as Martin said, chefs love adding salt to the food. And when you go out with your family and you have the meal out, absolutely go out and enjoy it. The whole point of us trying to help you is that you live well and that you get to enjoy your life. But that there might be a higher salt content in that meal when you go out. So the one top is fine. You might notice the next day that your weight is up, but over the next few days that salt content should come down. But when you're away, if you're eating a little bit of a higher salt content, just be mindful and just try and go with the lower salt option if possible. And then just have your travel insurance. And if you've got a device or any kind of a pacemaker, make sure you bring that ID card with you so that the hospital or the doctor, if you have to contact them while you're away, will know exactly what type of device you have. So my tips are, if you suffer from fatigue, which is, as I say, one of the biggest symptoms of heart failure, is that when you're having a shower, to use a stool or a chair when you're showering. Actually standing up for the whole shower is actually quite tiring. And if you just do that tip, it actually reduces an awful lot of the energy you use and it helps you reserve it a little bit better. You'll know yourself what parts of the day you've got your best energy levels. So for you, it might be the morning, it might be the afternoon or the evening. So if you've got activities, plan it around when you have your best energy levels. If it's going for appointments and you between trying to go into appointments, waiting, seen, try and ask if you could have your appointment, if possible, when you have your best energy levels. It's not always possible, but it's always well worth asking. I'd highly recommend that you get your iron and your thyroid level checked. Having low iron levels with heart failure is very, very common. It's because that the body thinks that there might be infection going on, because heart failure is from an inflammation process. And infection is also inflammation, and the body's trying to protect us, so it won't allow us to absorb iron. So 50% of people with heart failure have actually got low iron. Taking the oral iron doesn't normally work for people because the body won't absorb it, and you might have to get an iron infusion. So ask to know, can you get your iron checked and also get your thyroid checked? If I hear that somebody's suffering from fatigue, they're the two things that I'd get checked and see, can they be corrected? As I said, this is a jigsaw that we have to put together and make sure that we've all the pieces right, and that's how then we get the best result. If you're on a medication called amiodarone or Cordrone, and people might be on it for irregular heart rhythms, you have to use sun cream, and it has to be factor 30 or higher. And it's when you're in the daylight. Some people think it's when they're in the sun, and like in the summertime, and it's not, it's the daylight. Amiodarone or Cordrone is a fantastic medication, but it goes into our cells everywhere, and that includes the cells of our skin. So it's the daylight interacting with the medication in our skin, and it turns it a grey, kind of slaty grey color that's not reversible. But the sun cream will prevent that happening. So if you're on this medication, you just use the sun cream like moisturizer. You put it on your face or your hands where you're exposed to the sunlight. If you have any concerns, and I think Karen was saying it there earlier, and I was glad to hear that she brought them up, but if you have any concerns with sleeping, appetite, pain, bowels, tiredness, palpitations, breathlessness, swelling of the legs, tummy, or what Karen was saying as well, with dizziness, contact us. Don't delay treatment or advice. We're aiming to get you on medication and to aim at a dose, but everybody's dose level is quite different. So we've defined what dose is the perfect dose for you to be on, and the proper dose for you to be on is the one that you feel well on, not the one that you're feeling unwell, nauseated or dizzy on. And then So we have to work together as a team. And if you have those symptoms, you ring and you let us know and discuss it. Don't, as I say, biggest tip, don't delay treatment or advice.
Brave celebrities on the spot. And
So there's great resources for everybody out there, and that you can, with Irish Heart Foundation at heartfailureMatters.org, I'd highly recommend as well as a resource. And that's it for me. It's putting all those pieces of the jigsaw together, and that's how you keep as well as possible. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Norma. Thanks for the information and thanks for the tips. And I suppose just because you mentioned iron, Norma, I think that's what we're going to be looking at the next meeting in November, is we're going to have a session on iron. So do please join in. So for those of you who are watching later, thanks for watching. But if you have any questions or clarifications, do get in touch with myself and Katie as we're going back into the group now where we can discuss what has been presented. But for those of you who are watching back later, don't forget the nurse line 016685001, accessibility to counselling, or like Marta had mentioned about the newsletter and the recipes and the patient stories and information. If you want access to that, just do let us know. Do get in contact, do reach out and ask those questions or clarifications. But thanks for watching. So we're going to come off recording now.